I remember that moment when I lost my footing, my hands started slipping, everything. This is very true. When things that are shocking happen, everything slows down. Everything, time like dilates and gets really slow. And I fell off the houseboat, but on my way down, I don't even know how I did this. People who've heard the stories like that's the craziest thing ever. On my way down, I grabbed at the ledge, the 2-inch ledge where I had been standing. I was half in, half out of the water, screaming bloody murder. And the poor man who was on the houseboat had to clamber off in this weird, like, there was nowhere to stand. He somehow found a way to reach one of my tiny hands. I didn't know how to swim. I could have easily drowned in that lake.
Welcome to the Where Have You Been podcast. I'm your host, Bill Ream, and each week on the pod, I have conversations with incredible guests from all walks of life. Expect to hear funny, crazy, emotional, life-changing, and even sometimes life-threatening stories and experiences that will entertain and inspire you. As always, I appreciate your likes, subscriptions, ratings, and reviews wherever you are listening. It doesn't sound like much, but it truly helps the pod get to the ears of more people who may enjoy it. And check out the website, whybpodcast.com, for links to the socials where you can find pictures from the guests and their stories, and also buy merch if you're so inclined. Now let's get to this week's episode. Thank you for being here. All right, everyone, welcome into another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast. I have today the joy of having a fellow podcaster, along with being so many things, screenwriter, author. I'm not even going to try to list off everything that Kirsten does. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Kirsten. To our listeners, if you don't mind, who are you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm always asking this question and putting people on the spot. So, turnabout is fair play. You know, I'm a bit of a vagabond. I think it started early in my childhood, just living all over the place because of my father's job. And much to my mother's dismay, after I graduated from college and worked at a corporation for a couple of years, I decided I don't want this to be my life. So, I sold everything I owned, moved to Bellingham, Washington for a few years, and then thought this is beautiful but too small. Then moved to Portland and lived there for about 23 years, and then moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico about 10 years ago. But in between, I'm always traveling places, all of these places that I've lived. So, you know, my mother would like me to live this life where I'm married with kids and stable and having a 401k, but I'm like, no, Mom, life is way too short. I want to see the world. I want to have adventures. Other than that, you know, I went to seminary. I have a master's of divinity. I'm a panentheist, which means that I believe everything is conscious. I would say it leans more towards animism, that everything wants to communicate with us and is deeply alive. I'm a creative. I have a podcast, Bite-Sized Blessings. I have another podcast called The Beast Under the Bed about folk tales and fairy tales. I have an animated series about two crows who sit on a line called Murder of Two. I'm rewriting the Peter Rabbit book series and I have 3 of those books out. I'm endlessly creating and trying to get as much done as possible, which is what I've been doing all day today, producing the podcast, uploading to YouTube, creating. I mean, I was just like, oh my gosh, where has the day gone? Where has the day gone? So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And thankfully for you, because I'm in Pittsburgh, you still have 2 more hours left in your day than I have in mine.
True story.
But
yes.
So I mean, has it always been a thing for you? Like, has your mind just always been kind of working overtime and you just always had to find some outlets to get that stuff out?
That's a great question because, you know, I grew up in a really typical Midwestern household. You graduate high school, go to college, graduate, and then get a corporate job. You get married, you have kids. And not because anyone lacked imagination, but that was just, you know, the era that I grew up in, that was the dream. And, you know, I would say just based like looking back on my life that my brain definitely works a little bit differently in that I discovered, this is actually fascinating. So I recently discovered my mother's journal from like when I was born to age 3. And around age 2, she was writing in the journal and she said, it's so funny. You're walking around the house in your diaper and saying, I have an idea. I have an idea. And she said, "You don't even know what idea means. And not only that, where did you hear this from?" She's like, "I don't." And so whenever I tell that story to my friends, they're like, "That is so apocryphal because that is you." People come to me and they're like, "I'm trying to figure this out. How can I do this?" And I'm like, "I have an idea. Let me give you 5 ideas for how you can fix this." And it's not, I'm just known for that. However, detour, worked at corporate America, decided not my life, decided to see the world. For years worked in bars and clubs and coffee shops and restaurants so I could have the freedom to travel and go places. Then went to seminary, and seminary had me do, my first quarter, a 700 question personality test. And at the end, the guy came back and was like, "Oh, this is interesting. You're an artist." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, that is your look. Look at this line. You're an artist." And I thought, okay, I have to be going crazy. And he said, "But the weirdest is your second way of being in the world is science and technology." And I said, "That's true because I've been reading science magazines since I was a kid. Like, I love that. But this artist thing," and it really kind of gobsmacked me. And I thought to myself, well, you have all these ideas for things you want to do and write and create, but you don't do them because there was an interior block saying, "No, this is not legitimate. You can't make money. You can't do this, blah blah blah. Who lives their life like this?" But that actual result from all of those questions in that test changed my entire life. And I thought, I need to reconcile what this test is saying with what my brain is telling me with all of my ideas and live it out, because that's the only way I'll be able to live an authentic life. So yeah, that's what I've been striving to do ever since.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So it was kind of like that was the moment that it was like, okay, all right, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I was given permission.
Mm-hmm.
Be me, I guess you could say.
Yeah. That's really cool, and especially to be able to go back to a moment in time and go, yeah, that was it. I realized that. So I don't think most people probably get that. So before we get too far into the weeds here, would you already mentioned the one podcast and both podcasts actually, but would you give out the websites that people could go to? You don't have to maybe list every single one if you've got a
Oh,
lot, but
sure.
and maybe some socials where people can follow you as well. And I'll put it in the notes, but
Oh, yeah. Well, just to go back to the prior question, I have to get knocked over the head a few times before I understand what I'm supposed to be doing. So everybody can reach me at bitesizedblessings.com, and it's BYTE because that's the name of my podcast, Bite Sized Blessings, BYTE. But the BYTE is kind of an acknowledgement to my love for science and technology.
mm-hmm.
And so you can find everything on that website. And then on social media, here's my nerd flag coming up. My handle is Edison Sucks One. That's the number one. Edison Sucks One because I'm Tesla forever. And Thomas Edison was a horrible human being
Hmm.
and did some things that I just can't forgive. Even though I didn't live there, I just can't let it go. So that just lets you know how passionate I am about Tesla and Edison and the great wars over direct current, everything that was going on back then. So yes, clearly I have issues. And then the YouTube is Bite Sized Blessings, BYTE again. So yeah, but all those links are also on my website.
Excellent. Like I said, I'll put it all in the show notes. So you had mentioned that you worked all these jobs, saved all this money so that you could travel. Did your mom, did your family travel at all when you were a kid? Like, how did that actually start for you that it became sort of a passion?
Well, you know what? I don't think I ever said I saved money.
Well, you were spending it maybe, but you were working the bars and whatever to
I
make the
was.
money to be able to. So maybe you weren't saving it for long, but it was
No.
going to work for you.
I have to say that I grew up overseas. So this is what started everything. My dad's job, he worked for a company in Chicago actually that did massive hydroelectric dams and irrigation systems for developing countries and that like massive World Bank stuff. So we would have to move to the countries to I guess for my dad to just oversee the project or what have you. We were in Pakistan for 4 years. We were in Guyana for 2 years. I don't remember much about Guyana except accidentally I saw this beautiful fruit on this bush in the back of our complex and I ate it. And it turned out to be one of the hottest peppers you can eat in South America. and screaming for hours. And I have this distinct memory of my father coming to me and saying, "It's not that bad. Look, I'll take a bite." And him getting another one and taking a bite and then choking and turning red. So
How
that's
are
my
you with
memory.
spicy food now? Just out of curiosity.
I
Side
can't.
note,
I just
not at
cannot.
all.
I mean, like a little bit. Yeah,
Like a
no.
mild chicken wing or something is
Yes. I
fine.
mean, I turn into a like my face turns red. I start sweating. Oh my God, it is like a
Mm,
bad situation.
gotcha.
It's probably my body reacting, saying, "Good God, not again."
It's a flashback to that day.
It's a
Yeah.
flashback. It's a whole body flashback. So yeah, so as a consequence of living in Guyana and Pakistan when I was a kid, we came back to the States when I was about 11. But as a result, we went to Sri Lanka, we went to the Maldives, we were in India, we went to Nepal, we went to Kashmir. We went to all these places as a kid. And quite honestly, you don't know any different when you're a kid and you're living this life. You think, oh, this is normal. This is what everyone does. But I do have to say that so when I came back to the States and was plopped in the middle of Illinois outside Chicago, Illinois was the foreign place. And Illinois was the place that I was scared of
Isn't
because
that crazy?
everything was really, and I'm not saying this is bad, but all of a sudden, instead of cultural diversity, instead of things being so different, it was so homogenized. What you wore to school could make you or break you. What you brought in your lunch box could make you or break you. Everyone thought I was weird. My mom sent me to school on the first day in Pakistani clothing. That was not a good thing. I was labeled a weirdo. I just didn't understand the social conventions of the suburbs of Illinois and white Illinois white people. Like, I just didn't get it. It was so confusing for me.
You
And it
know what's
was so,
funny,
what?
Kirsten? And I mentioned to you offline before we started that I had another guest that was, again, I believe she was either born or grew up overseas. It's episode 18, Marie DeCoste. I highly encourage you to listen because I
Okay.
remember she had a similar experience when she did move back to the States, trying to kind of acclimate to what things are like here, which was just so role reversal of what you would think of when someone goes through, I guess, like a typical childhood and then maybe goes somewhere else to study.
Yeah.
It's the parallels between what you're saying and it's yeah, it's crazy. Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't
Well,
mean to interrupt you, but
no, no. Oh my gosh, you're fine. It was not easy for me. And I ended up really struggling that first year. Now, it did not help when in Pakistan, my father was taking me my first day to school and said, "So, do you want to go to kindergarten or first grade?" And I was like, "Kindergarten sounds terrifying. That word is scary. I hate it. First grade sounds like where you win every day because you come in first." And I said first grade. So I totally skipped kindergarten. And so I was also in a school in Illinois where I was younger than everyone in the grade. So I was completely at sea. So I had to do fourth grade again. They held me back because I psychologically, mentally, emotionally could not deal. It was just the change was so confounding for me. My little brain was like, what is this brave new world that sucks? And I guess I have to learn to acclimate. So
was
that
that a good thing then in the end?
well,
Re-
I
Redoing fourth grade.
have a funny story for you.
Yeah.
So, you know, time goes by, I go to junior high. I end up joining the reading competition because I love reading books. I still love reading books so much. So I would read books before school in the library. At lunch, I would swallow my lunch whole and then go to the library and read, 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 read. And then after school, if I could stay, I would read in the library. And they had this reading competition. And so you'd read a book and answer 10 questions and you get a point. And so the first year, I read like 96 books.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and I made the front page of the paper. It was very exciting. So then in eighth grade, here I am, I'll go puttering along, doing the reading competition and stuff. And I'm in chemistry class one day, and I get called out of class to go to the guidance counselor's office. And I'm like, what is happening? And by this time, my parents were divorced, okay? And they actually did not like each other. And so I walk into the guidance counselor office. There's both of my parents who can't stand each other in the same room. And I thought, did someone die? What happened here? And the guidance counselor took, me aside in the room with my parents and said, "Your daughter is not developing socially. She isn't making any friends. She's spending all her time in the library." And the decision was made to ban me from the library. I was not allowed to go to the library anymore. So,
What?
yes, I'm not even kidding. I'm not kidding. I was so bereft, sad, depressed. No,
Devastating.
I know, devastated. I was sick to my stomach. The next day, I gobbled my lunch up and then had to go to recess for the first time and walked into that huge gym and no one was nice to me. No one said hi. And I looked over at the side and there were three lovely African American girls over on the side and they were like, "Come sit with us." They were so nice to me. No one else would talk to me. And so that's how I started making friends. So here's another apocryphal moment in my life, right? Because when I graduated from eighth grade, I got nominated class bookworm. No surprise because I won the reading competition in eighth grade anyway, even though they banned me from the library. And I think I read 120 books that year.
You
So
showed them.
yes, I showed them. So then time marches on. I graduate from high school and I'm nominated class clown. And what is fascinating about the story is that if I wouldn't have gotten banned from the library and forced to talk to people, made to talk to people, I would have never discovered this latent part of myself that's actually really funny. So yeah.
That's a turn I didn't expect to see. I mean, I can sense from the vibe that we have when we've talked. Like, I knew this is going to be a fun episode. We're going to laugh. We're going to have fun. I can tell. But I didn't expect that that was the moment that kind of pulled that out of you. So that's, I guess, in a way, it's a blessing.
I know. I know later on in my life, because I've led this kind of, I don't know, somewhat different lifestyle of not following the rules and getting married and having kids and all of this stuff. My dad visited me in Portland and he said, "I am so sorry we banned you from the library." And I think I was in my late 30s. And he said, "I am so sorry we banned you from the library. I mean, just look, you could have done something with your life." And I was like, "Okay, Dad, come on. I'm doing exactly what I want. Just because I'm not living what you want me to doesn't mean I'm successful or I'm so happy and I get to make my own life and my own rules." But even then, I mean, he'd been carrying that for like 25 years and was like, "I can't believe we banned you from the library." I'm like, "I still can't believe you did it either, but I'm okay."
Everything worked out in the end. So
Yes.
excellent. So this, Kirsten, this is the part where I would usually say, "Where have you been?" And I will, and I just did technically. But I think you kind of listed a lot of the places that you have been, and there's some more I think that you didn't list. But I'm just going to say it again, and I'll let you run with it however you'd like to. And if you want to jump into a story from somewhere, you're welcome to. Kirsten Rudberg, where have you been?
Oh dear, you've opened a can of worms. I hope you're ready.
Love cans of worms.
Well, I think one of the most beautiful places, or actually the most beautiful place I've ever been, is Kashmir. And we were able to get in when we were living in Pakistan and Lahore in a brief period where Pakistan and India were not at war over Kashmir. It was a period of peace. And so my parents took me to Kashmir and we spent, I think it was a week, maybe two, but I think it was a week on a houseboat on one of the lakes in Srinagar. And it's so beautiful. I have these amazing photos of being on the houseboat. And to get anywhere, we'd have to have a gentleman come with his boat. And I remember going across the waters and the lily pads and the fish in the water and all the insects. And we went to go visit this gorgeously grand Victorian, I'm sure it was from colonial times, house with all these extensive, expansive gardens. I just remember that distinctly. But the funniest thing or craziest thing that happened in Pakistan. So here I am, okay? And by the way, there are, I think it's like crocodiles that live in these waters. So I'm bored, right? Because I'm 4 years old. I remember this. I'm four and I'm bored. And it's my parents, me, and this guy who's helping us with the houseboat. And so I start for fun. There's this tiny ledge that's like 2 inches wide all the way around the houseboat. And there's just enough. I don't even know why nobody was watching me. Okay. This is like the crazy times when nobody paid attention to their kids. So I've discovered that on the exterior of the houseboat, there are enough handholds for me to get around the entire outside of the houseboat. So, I've done it several times. I'm bored. Nobody's watching me. Who cares where the kid is? Whatever. And so I basically am going again, making another circuit, and my foot slips.
Oh boy.
And I remember that moment when I lost my footing, my hands started slipping, everything. This is very true. When things that are shocking happen everything slows down. Everything, time like dilates and gets really slow. And I fell off the houseboat, but on my way down, I don't even know how I did this. People who've heard the stories like that's the craziest thing ever. On my way down, I grabbed at the ledge, the 2-inch ledge where I had been standing. I was half in, half out of the water, screaming bloody murder. And the poor man who was on the houseboat had to clamber off in this weird, like, there was nowhere to stand. He somehow found a way to reach one of my tiny hands. I didn't know how to swim. I could have
Oh my
easily
gosh.
drowned
Not to
in that
mention
lake.
crocodiles.
Yes, and the crocodiles. I mean, it was insane. It's insane that I lived through that. But I just on my way down saw that ledge and I grabbed I don't even know with my little 4-year-old fingers how I did that. I He came and he yanked me out. I was just I mean, I remember it so vividly because it was terrifying.
Oh, sure.
And also, I just reflect back and I'm like, okay, I'm an adult now and I don't even know if I could do that now. I'm like, I don't think that's possible. But somehow I was able to see the ledge and survive. So that's my Kashmir story. Besides for it being just, it's in the mountains, it's just inadequately words, they don't come because Kashmir is like this idyllic Eden that is beyond anything you could ever imagine for what beauty looks like. Just really incredible. The other place that was kind of fun was the Maldives. We spent 2 weeks there before the Maldives were developed. So it was very, very rudimentary. Our floors were made of sand. We had mosquito nets because they were insane. We went there on this tiny, from the main island, on this tiny 6-seater plane, which scared the crap out of me. We made it. And my funniest memory of that is, well, I love the fact that you could go 100 yards offshore and the water was still, up to your waist. It was
Mm.
just the shallows went on forever. They had an incredible pool right next to the beach with salt water with every kind of fish and sharks in it. It was the first time I'd ever seen nude sunbathers. And so my mom's like, let's go on a walk. So we walked around the island in one day and I was like, Mom, do you see that over there? She's like, yes, it's not a big deal. Okay, just ignore it. And I'm like, I just don't understand. But yes, everybody laying out naked as the
I've
day they were
never
born.
I've never understood nude beaches. I just feel like there's so much risk.
No,
So
I
much risk.
agree. I agree. But you know what? This was in a time that was, I mean, there weren't very many people like around on the
I just
Maldives.
mean from sand and little critters
Yes.
and,
Yes, I agree. Yes. Okay, yeah. Yeah, yeah. And that
but
gets to me to my other story of I had hung my towel to go swimming in the ocean over a tree and then grabbed it and put it around my body and it was covered with red biting ants. So
oh
I got bitten
no.
all over the place. But that I mean you'd go to the restaurant, the floors were sand. Anywhere you went, it was so rudimentary and so simple. Everything was so simple that I mean, I just remember it so vividly because it was so beautiful. And now, then I watched with dismay as Club Med went in and all these big hotels and they changed everything. And you really just don't have the gorgeous, rustic vibe anymore of just quiet and peace and sand and sun and the ocean going on forever. It's now like a constant 24-hour party of whatever's happening. So, yeah,
Yeah. And like you said, it's a very small place too, so it's not like there probably aren't really pockets of that still exist, are there?
no, no.
Yeah.
Everything's become like an influencer site, I feel like. If one person discovers something that
Mhm.
is pristine and beautiful, within, days of posting, I feel like everybody just converges on this, and I don't know, there's no respect for the land or the history of the place, whether it's the history of the land or the peoples. Everything's very extractive these days. It's like there's no communion with the actual spot and what's going on. They're just using it so they can make money or get views or whatever. But that's a whole other
Right.
conversation. I'm very grateful
Yeah.
to have grown up when I did and visited these places when it was a much simpler time when things were just more pristine. So yeah.
Right. Right. I don't know how I want to phrase this. Do you, or have you thought about trying to seek out any places that are kind of maybe still kind of like that today? I don't even know how you would, because obviously somebody would have to be somewhere in order to let you know that it exists. But, you know, do you prefer to go to maybe some places that are less touristy, less commonly traveled? Does that make sense?
I don't seek out anything. You have to know this. I actually just am all
Fair.
about, yeah, the surprise encounter and letting the journey or the experience or the trip evolve or unfurl in a way where, beautiful things can happen. For example, when I walked the Camino from southern France, I decided to take a route, and this is 10 years ago, 12 actually. I decided to take a route that was less well known and known for its solitude. Now, as I stated, I don't have a religious bent. I'm not Catholic. I just did this because I kind of felt compelled to. It felt like something I'd done in every lifetime. And so I was just showing up for this assignment, and that, I was doing it because I've always done it, if that makes any sense. I'm very much a mystic. And so I started, I looked up this route, and it's from southern France to, you can go up to the Le Puy route, which is the party route, turn left and go to Santiago. And so I picked this route because it said there's a lot of solitude and it's very arduous. And so I thought, okay, haven't had any training, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. And it was really trial by fire. But I ended up walking 500 miles. I skipped the Le Puy party route once I got that far north and decided to walk along the Spanish coast. Within that big, long journey were so many instances of, I'm not even kidding, just magic. I was in the middle of this small village. So the woman at the tourist office in southern France said, you should not be doing this because no one speaks English in these, I'm sorry, speaks English in these small villages, and you don't speak French. And I was like, look, I feel like I'm supposed to do this, so I'm just going to do it. And I was walking through this small village in the middle of nowhere, and this gorgeously impeccable, beautiful French woman with long gray hair and braids down came up to me. And, because I did it alone. And she's like, grabbed my hand and she's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm walking the Camino. And she said, alone? And I said, yes. And she just grabbed my face and was like tutting and cooing over me like I was, some sort of little grandchild that needed to be. She would just gave me so much love. Another time I actually was walking out of Montpellier, and you have to know that the weather that year was the worst weather France had had in 90 years. So it was cold still in May, June, July. I think in June it snowed and hailed on me one day.
Oh my gosh.
I was walking outside of Montpellier and I started like trying to find a place to stay. And everywhere was closed because they're like, we're not opening because the weather, nobody's walking because the weather is so bad. So I found myself at a loss in the French forest, and I was like, okay, it was pretty remote. I thought, I guess I need to stop because I can't make the next town. There's nothing in the next town. I'll have nowhere to sleep. And, for the Camino, you're supposed to bring as little as possible to make your pack super light. Well, I brought my rainfly, my tent, my thermarest. I brought everything because I'm like, I'm just going to be ready. And that night I did camp in the French woods all by myself. It was scary. It rained. Someone walked by my tent in the middle of the night. I don't know who it was. It could have been a Yeti for all I know. I just curled into a little ball and was like, please God, don't see me. Please God, don't see me. So it was the next day, I like got up, everything was wet. I was wet. I was very bedraggled. I walked into the town where I was going to stay the next night, and it was a World UNESCO Heritage Site, famous, been around for thousands of years. And I'm going to butcher this name, St. Guilherme in the Desert. I believe it was founded by William of Orange. It is breathtakingly beautiful. It's stunning. I was like, I can't take this. I'm staying at a hotel. But the hotel I stayed in was like 500 years old. So it was made of stone. It was very rustic. And that, I stayed for a few days, dried off. When I was leaving, the morning I was leaving, it was just me in the dining room. And the woman said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm walking the Camino. And she said, by yourself? And I said, people were like, okay, you're alone and you're a woman and you're walking through this countryside where there's no one. You've got to be crazy. And I said, yes, by myself. And she said, hold on a second. And she went and she created a basket of food for me to shove in my pack. I have told people about my Camino experience because I walked for about 2.5 months. that I've never been treated with more love, more respect, more belonging and kindness from complete strangers in my entire life in a foreign country than the people in France in these remote villages. I mean, they went out of their way. Like if I was walking through a village, I would be walking and there would be a few people leaning out of their windows yelling bonjour at me. I'm so excited. After being in the country for I think it was like 6 weeks, 7 weeks, maybe 2 months, I ran it, I picked up enough French that this really elderly man came out of his house and he grabbed my hands and he was asking me all these questions in French. And I understood some of it. So we had the most broken conversation I've ever had, but the joy and elation on his face to encounter a pilgrim and have this conversation and find someone who is walking the way. He was so excited. There was so much connection and beauty and just unbelievable compassion for me. I can't even tell you. Also, the food. The food was unbelievable. I
Do
cannot
you
wait to get
think
back to the food.
the like the compassion and the feeling from everyone? Do you think that it was partially because not just because you are a woman walking it by yourself, but also a big part of it because of the weather and because again nobody
Um,
else is really doing it, and so it kind of made it more special.
Well, I think actually part of it is because of my nature, to be honest, because I walked for a few days with this other pilgrim, and I'll call her Judy. And she
Hmm.
was probably about 10 years older than me at the time, walked every year, was from Switzerland. And you meet people in their rawest state when you're on the Camino, and they will tell you things and say things to you that they might not otherwise tell complete strangers because you're walking for so long together. Anyway, Judy's experience of France was like, I hate everyone. Everyone hates me. They're all rude. They all suck. They're all terrible. They're all ugly. These people did this. These people did that. And
Wow.
we got to where was it? Castra, I think it was. And I stayed for a few days, and she stayed for a few days. We met for lunch before we parted. And I saw how she treated the wait staff at the restaurant. And I was like, I also helped her
Uh,
mail something at a French village, and she was like not nice and was kind
hmm.
of short and cutting and mean. And it was this really interesting experience to see what she was putting out was being reflected back at her. And
Wow.
I thought to myself, okay, this is why I'm having the experience I am, because I'm here. I don't have any expectations. I know nothing about France in general. I love people. And so I just lead with this massively open heart, which doesn't help me sometimes and can be a bad thing. But in general, I'm just really in for the adventure. And I have a generosity of spirit that is pretty extreme. And I think people could see that. And so
Yeah.
that was reflected back to me from all of these people and these strangers.
And I think
It
some of
was
this, some of that like karmic sort of thing, I believe in it 100%, that kind of what you put out into the world is sort of what you're going to get back. And sometimes you even get it back, in multiples. So I
yeah.
definitely believe that there's truth to that.
Yeah, the Camino can be the walking wounded. That's all I have to say. I was like, I have never known people, fellow walkers that I've walked with for less time and known their deepest secrets. I would
Yeah.
never tell anyone any of this stuff. There is this funny, I mean, this happened 12 years ago, so take this with a grain of salt. But
Hmm.
I found out with about a month in that they are called the wolves of the Camino. So I think it's Les Loups de Chemin or something like that, the wolves of the Camino. So they walk every year because they know all these single women are going to be walking who are looking, for true love. And they're not awful men, they're not evil men, they're not bad men. They're just like, hey, the chance to hook up is high. So one night I was having wine with some fellow pilgrims, and this other guy, I forget where he was from. I think he was French, maybe, or Polish. Anyway, we drank too much, which was a mistake because the next day I woke up hungover like a dog. It was so bad, and he, at the end of the night, he's like, "So, yeah, my room is just down there. It's number 42." And I'm like, "Okay, great. Yeah, see you later." Because I did not know about the wolves of the Camino. And he's like, yeah, so number 42, I'm like, literally right there. And I'm like, okay, yeah, good night. So fun talking to you. Yeah, bye. And of course, I found out later that he was like, oh, she's single. She's probably looking for some action. Here's my door. And I was like, I am not looking for some action. I am tired and I just want to sleep. and you're annoying me. I don't know if that's the case anymore because the Camino's become kind of a, I don't know, some sort of, I don't know, it thing to do. Back when I did it, it wasn't so much. And my family, by the way, has this funny story about me. They're like, Kirsten, you move somewhere like Bellingham or Portland or Santa Fe, and within a few years, the city gets ruined because everyone wants to move there and rent prices skyrocket and sales prices of houses skyrocket. And it just becomes an influx. They're like, you're so bad for every city. But yeah, that does seem to be happening. I happen to get places before they kind of explode and go crazy, like the Camino, which is now kind of, you know, everyone's doing it, which is great. It's a beautiful process. It's, whether you do the party route or you do a lesser known route, it's an incredible, slow way to see the countryside, enjoy the food, make connections with people, make friends, and see the world in a way that is really contemplative and beautiful. Yeah, I am so grateful for that trip in so many different ways. Okay, so here's the best thing, okay? I would eat, like, I always say this, I would eat 20 chocolate croissants a day and still lose weight. That is why you do the Camino.
There you go.
Yes.
Gives you carte blanche.
Yes.
And probably the best chocolate croissants
Oh
ever.
my God. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've never been to France. Never been high on my list, but that doesn't mean I won't make it there someday. Was it like really physically taxing to do that walk?
You know,
Because you could do it at your pace, right? You don't. It doesn't
yes.
have to take months,
Yes.
but
Yes.
you can, if you have that amount of time, then obviously you can make it easier on yourself.
Yeah. So, okay, I'll tell you a couple stories really quick. So the first day I left Arles, which I learned that I was pronouncing it wrong. I was saying I left Arles, which is where Vincent van Gogh painted, but it's pronounced Arles. I left Arles. One day I had to walk 25 miles. It was hot that day, and I brought one bottle of water. And to tell you that I was woefully underprepared and didn't understand what was going on would be the understatement of the century. That day I learned about carrying 10,000 gallons of water. It was, you can go as fast or as slow as you want. I would meet and walk with a couple people a couple of days, and then I would stay in a place for multiple days and they would go on. So I met people from all over the world. I met people who were violently ill, and they were trying to walk the Camino to see if they could be healed. I met people who had bad experiences in relationships and they were looking for love on the Camino. I met people I met a nun who was walking the Camino, and they all did it at their own pace. And you would bump into them from time to time at different hostels or auberges. Now, I was able to do the Camino in a really generous way. My best friend, who I talked about going to Florida, died really young of a rare form of Parkinson's. And I was able to do the Camino in a really expansive way, in a way that was really generous. So, for example, I didn't have to stay in hostels. I would just go on some site and look to where I could stay in a hotel that was the cheapest. And because the weather was so bad, the rates weren't bad. So, I had an incredible experience. And that actually allowed me to get to know the people in these towns, in these villages, and have relationship with them. Another quick story in that World UNESCO Heritage Site, St. Guillaume in the desert. Sorry, France, for butchering that. I started going to this restaurant to eat, and there was
the entire country does listen, and they will criticize you.
I know.
No, I'm just kidding.
I know. I am aware. I started going to this restaurant, and this young woman worked there, probably 25 or so, and she said, "Can we practice English?" Because she wanted to practice, and I said, "Yes, of course." So we would talk. I went there like 2 or 3 days. And on the last day, we were talking, and she was an artist. And she's like, "I'd love to show you some of my work." So she went in the back, she pulled out her massive portfolio, and we're looking through everything. And, I said, she's like, "How can you do the Camino like this? Usually everybody's always walking." And I said, "You know what? One of my best friends died, and she left me some money. So I'm able to do it in a way that like few can. And will always be endlessly grateful to her because she's created this magic in my life for me to do the Camino." And she said, "Oh my goodness." And she flipped to this gorgeous, gorgeous pastel pastel drawing of a beautiful woman spinning in a cornfield with her arms out, and the joy and the gorgeousness and revelation and everything in the image was just so there. And she said, "This is my favorite image, and I didn't do it." And I said, "Oh, who is this?" And she said, "This is my friend who got cancer when she was 21. She was told that she would only have a few years to live. It was incurable. And so she decided to see the world. And before she left, she painted this, or I mean, drew it actually, and gave it to me so that I'd always remember her. And then she said, and she traveled a little bit and then went to Brazil where she died eventually a few
Oh my
years
gosh.
afterwards. And I said, oh my gosh. I said, that is just so shocking because, here I am telling you about my best friend who died. And then she said, I want to share this with you. And here's this drawing and this image. And I said, oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you for telling me that story. I am so sorry, but what a powerful image. I mean, like, what? I can't believe you have this gorgeous image of your friend. I mean, I just was like gobsmacked by how beautiful this image was and how life affirming. And I don't know, it's really hard to talk about because it brings back the death of my friend. And she turned to me and she said, yes, well, I think it's time for it to travel again. I'm going to give it to you.
Oh,
And so she
no
gave it to me.
way.
Yes. And I
That's
still
so
have it.
beautiful.
I know. I still have it. I framed it. It is one of my most important pieces because I thought to myself, her friend and this image, they gave it to me because I am supposed to remember this is how I am supposed to live each and every day. So,
Absolutely.
yes, look at this. Arms wide open, ready for the adventure, maybe engage in a little mischief. So, yeah. I don't
So awesome. I don't even know what to say. That's so cool.
I didn't really answer your question about how arduous it was. I do have to tell you that when I started climbing into the foothills of the Pyrenees, yes, you should have heard me panting like a buffalo. Now, thank God, I'd already been walking for like 5 weeks and had built up some muscles, but I'm not even kidding. People would feel my backpack and they're like, did you bring rocks from Oregon? They're like, why is they're like, are these all the prayers of your friends on these rocks you're going to leave at that famous mountain of rocks where people, I was like, no, it's my tent. I needed it all.
And
But I was,
unfortunately, it's not
yes,
even tons of bottles of water.
no. I was like, oh, and then, of course, being a book nerd, I would go into, the big towns like Toulouse and I'd find a bookstore that had English language. So I'd shove 5 more books in my back so I could read at
Kirsten.
night. So I was just like walking along and I got to the foothills and I'm not joking. Okay. Those were what I call shut up foothills. So you don't talk, you don't do anything. Thank God I was alone. I would go as far as I could. Then I'd stop and stand for several minutes. And then I would go as far as I could, then I would stop and breathe like a buffalo and almost feel like I was going to die. But then eventually, if you go slow enough, you get to the top and you're like, all right, now it's just undulating gently and I don't have to climb anymore. But yes, there are moments when I walked through a massive, massive field of aspens in the middle of this forest in France that was, I mean, it was just me and the wind and the aspens. And I could just hear it was so eerie because the aspens were sort of changing leaves a little bit because the weather was so weird. And so I was surrounded in this kind of semi golden glow in the middle of nowhere with the path leading in front of me and the whisper of the aspens and the leaves all clicking and clacking. I walked and walked and walked. Then I came to this part where it was just clear logging had gone on or a forest fire had gone on. I had been walking alone for hours. Okay. I'm so dehydrated. This was a surreal experience. I haven't seen another human being for hours. I come out in this blasted area where it looks like, I don't know, was there a fire? Did lightning hit here? I don't know. I look to the left and there are two super, super beautiful, expensive sport cars. This is the middle of nowhere, parked. There's a, picnic table. There's about 6 people sitting at the picnic table. They have cheeses. They have grapes. They have a magnum of champagne. They are living life. They are laughing and being joyful and like having the best time. And I look over and I'm like, am I seeing like what is happening right now? And they're like, come over and drink with us. Drink, have fun. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so dehydrated.
All right.
If I
Champagne would have
drink,
been terrible.
yeah, I'm gonna die if I have any alcohol. Like it will be bad. But I thought, I mean, I would never have had that encounter except that the journey took as long as it did to get up that mountain and to walk through those aspens. And so that's what I'm talking about. I don't plan anything. It's just encounter. And you don't know what kind of encounters you're going to have if you have a plan and rush to do things. Because I met pilgrims who were like, okay, today I'm going to walk 30 miles. I have to be at this place by this time because I have to do something. And they were just like, run, 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 run. And I was like, that is not the way I want to. This is not what that trip's about. This trip for me is about slow, slow pace. Like, welcome the conversation with the land, welcome the conversation with my body, welcome, the pilgrims I might meet, and the slow conversations we're going to have, and the sharing that we're going to have. So you meet all sorts of different people on the Camino. But it is a lot, bless their hearts. And this is not meant as a negative thing. There's a lot of walking wounded and people who are trying to heal their bodies and their
Mhm.
souls, heal their traumas, their memories, maybe pray while they walk, maybe chant or do the rosary. I mean, there's on my route, which was a slower route and a more solitary route, I met more people who were just intentionally trying to learn about themselves, trying to learn about the world, trying to learn about their bodies and their endurance, trying to learn about their relationship to the world. It was really quite extraordinary.
So awesome. So when you travel to even, well, actually, okay, before we move away from the Camino, is there anything else you want to add to the Camino, and then we kind of move away?
Oh gosh. Well, there's so much I could tell you about the Camino. One of the things I have to say is walking in France when it's rainy and the weather is terrible is not really that bad of a thing. So I'll
Hmm.
tell you about two memories. One of the things that was just really gorgeous is, of course, I did most of this alone. And periodically throughout the day, I would come upon a small village. It could have 5 houses, it could have 20 houses, but always, always. Okay, and keep in mind it's cold. It's probably been raining for hours. The church would be open. So I would stop at the church. I would go inside, put my pack down for a little bit, gather myself, maybe eat a cookie, maybe eat a croissant, maybe even have a little lunch because I was always very respectful. I cleaned up after myself. I was just trying to get out of the weather and warm up a little bit. I mean, it could be really chilly. And so that was really, I thought to myself, and I would light a candle. I'd put one, not dollar, pound, whatever, €1 in, and I would light a candle to keep myself safe and keep myself, able to keep going on the way and walking. So it was really quite something to be alone and alone and alone in the rain and the weather and the elements, and then come upon a small village. It's probably dark. It's so damp because it's raining. And then you see the church and it's lit only by candles. Just exquisite. Unbelievable. Another
Wow.
thing, this is funny, but also probably not for the frogs that were squashed under my foot. I came to the top. It had been raining for days. I came to the top of this hill, pretty steep hill, and I had to go down. I could see the trail, and it was just mud. I mean, mud. So, I mean, I was not going to find any purchase. And at the same time, I realized that maybe tens of thousands, if not a million frogs had just hatched, and they were all over the path, hopping everywhere, hop, 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 hop. And there was no way to get around them. I mean, there were so many baby frogs. I've never seen anything like it in my life. So at first, I tried to, very gently and gracefully walk down this hill in this mud. But pretty soon I wasn't able to, because of the slope, I was more like skiing through the mud down the hill and trying not to fall over and trying to avoid frogs. Was not entirely successful. All I hoped was when I slid down the hill with and my boots on them, they were able to extricate themselves out of this, I don't even know, foot deep mud that I found myself in. I am someone who's always loved mud pies, mud volleyball, anything to do with mud. So it wasn't like I was not having a great time. I just felt terrible for the frogs. It was
Oh,
really, yeah, not good. Not good. And then one day I got lost because they'd done a ton of harvesting in the French forest, and the sign for the route that I should have taken got taken down. And so I got lost and found myself so far. Okay. And it was freezing. It had been raining all day. I found myself in this weird village, so small. I had no idea where I was. I was starting to panic. I was thinking to myself, I might need to immediately put camp up because I've got my rain fly. But I thought to myself, I think I'm hypothermic. And if I do that, I could die. It was so cold. It didn't help that I was soaked head to toe. I mean, it just was bad. So I stopped in this village under this garage awning or whatever and tried to get my phone out. My hands didn't work because I was so cold. I was frozen. I somehow got my hands to work to check my phone. And I don't know how this happened. I don't know how this happened because my phone did not work in France, but somehow my phone linked to a satellite on a map for 5 minutes to show me where I was. I consulted my paper map and where I was supposed to be going, found a way to get to the road that was supposed to take me to the town I should have ended up in before I got diverted and lost in the woods. I arrived at the auberge where I was staying. I was soaked to the bone. No one would come to the door. I was so frozen. Finally, someone opened the door and let me in. It was a really scary situation. And basically, I had to immediately, they're like, get undressed. We need to dry everything for you and take a hot shower. That it was a really scary situation. And I'm glad that I had training. I took Knowles National Outdoor Leadership School, and I've done a bunch of camping. And I knew that if you get wet and it's cold, you cannot stop. You can't stop. But
Oh boy.
even despite that, I was like, I want to stop. I was getting so tired. My brain was starting to get confused because of the cold. I was like, I can just stop and I'll camp in the woods, even though there was no good place to camp and the ground was soaking wet. Like, it didn't make any sense. And I just thought, no, 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 you don't stop. You keep walking. If you stop, you might die. So yeah, that was the only situation where I really felt that was scary for me. So yeah. Okay. Done with the Camino stories. Done.
It's so awesome though. Like I could still listen to as much more as you could say about it. I just think it's the people that I've had on that have talked about it have every one of them has had some stories of, that they'll just never forget. I mean, it's just an experience that they'll never forget. But
Yeah.
so you had mentioned not really planning necessarily when you go somewhere. Does that include even like when you went to England or when you went to, wherever else?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
When you go
So
to just any vacation or any not vacation, but any travel that you do you kind of just have a loose idea of like, here's some places I can stay, but then I'm just going to explore?
yeah, so basically, like, so I walked up to the Spanish coast. I'm like, I can walk the Spanish coast to the Camino, even though in every guide it's like, do not walk the Spanish coast in the Camino in June, July, and August. It's too hot. I'm like, it's been so chilly in France. It'll be fine. It was not fine. I walked for a few weeks and got so dehydrated, so dehydrated. I had not urinated for 3 days and I was still walking. Okay. That's how crazy it was. So hot. Here's the beach. People are nude sunbathing again. And I'm like, okay, apparently it's not going to be raining like France. I am climbing this like, my God. Also, I didn't know it was just going to be like climbing cliffs, going down cliffs, climbing cliffs. I'm climbing this cliff near Deba or outside of Deba. It's like 10 miles from Deba. And I'm in the Spanish coast. And I mean, had that, I'm so prosaic. I had that experience that they have in the movies where you reach your limit and you're broken open. You just break. You break. And I was climbing. I was so ill. I was so dehydrated. I was just so effed up. And I broke and I screamed as loud as I could because I was so broken. And in that moment, this epiphany came to me. It was so interesting. And the second I had that epiphany, I heard this voice say, okay, your Camino's over. And I thought, what? I haven't even gotten to Santiago. But there was something in my heart that said, no, you're done. This is it. This is what you came for. This is what you came for. And so I literally crawled into Deba, spent a couple days in bed, and then thought to myself, since I'm done, I'm just going to take the ferry to England. But first, I laid in a bed in Santander in Spain because I was so dehydrated. It took me like 4 days to get rehydrated. I was so sick. And then I took the ferry to Cornwall. And I took the Queen Mary back to the States. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to spend some time in Cornwall. I mean, this is King Arthur's land, okay? So let's find some places we want to go that are spread all over Cornwall, Land's End, King Arthur's birthplace, and let's have an adventure. And so I took the ferry, went to Marazion, went to Plymouth, went to Penzance, to Bude, to Tintagel, which is King Arthur's birthplace. In Tintagel, I spent 4 days and I made friends with this family that owns this incredible cafe that's still there in Tintagel. I want to go back at some point. And I met this photographer, and he does those special photos where they're so funny, where you dress up as like a fairy or something, and he does these like fun dress up photos. And he's like, okay, let's dress you as a princess or a fairy. And I was like, no, I want to be the one fighting the dragon. So he gave me this actual sword that was so heavy, and he set me up, and he's like, I'll just Photoshop the dragon in. So there's this hilarious photo of me dressed as like a prince or a king with a huge cape, basically screaming and fighting this dragon that's coming towards me. It is so funny. But, I made friends with them. And when I was at the cafe owners were like, hey, it's a photographer's birthday. Will you take him his birthday cupcake? And I was like, yes. So I took him his birthday cupcake. I also it allowed me to see Tintagel, go to King Arthur's, the cemetery there, the castles there. I went to St. Nectan's Glen, which is an old ancient pilgrimage site with a waterfall and a spring. And that place is wow. Okay. The vibes are crazy. That's all I have to say. When you have like hundreds of years of concentrated prayer in one place, it becomes something else entirely.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Like you could feel it?
oh my God, yes. I mean, basically I went so early in the morning because I wanted to be alone. And they're like, okay, so it's 3 miles out of town. I'm like, I can walk that because I just walked across France. So they're like, here's the path. So first you start off going through farmers' fields, climbing these stiles, going through fields. Then you descend into this light woodland. There's this beautiful copse of trees and a beautiful stream, and it's silent. No one else is there because it's so early. Here are all these fairy stones that people have built. So you're like in this English wood. All you hear is the stream. All you hear are the birds and the wind in the trees. And you see these fairy things start happening. Then you get to St. Nectan's Glen, which has now been purchased by someone, and it's like a Catholic pilgrimage site. But you descend down into this kind of this hollow, and there's trees, and everything is covered in ribbons, the prayers of the ribbons that people have left. People leave coins in the crevices of the walls with things they want to leave behind. There were a couple people there, but they left, and then I was left alone in that place. And I was sitting there, and it just was, everything was infused. The power, it was so intense and thick in that place. So yeah. And then I just had this experience. I mean, I'm going to tell you something a little mystical, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So years ago, back, but probably before the internet or when things were being born, I went to this new age bookstore in Portland and rented a CD, and it was like, meet your spirit guides. And I'm like, okay, I don't even know if this is real, but why not play around with it? And I did it a few times, and my spirit guide came to me, and it was a stag. But interestingly, it was a stag in a business suit. And I was like, this is odd. Huh. And so I said, what's your name? And he's like, well, it starts with an A, but you literally can't pronounce it because it's like beyond what humans can pronounce. And I was like, okay, this is weird, but I don't know, whatever. But
And you're talking about almost like in a vision sort of thing?
Yeah, like so it's like doing meditation, and you follow like the CD, and the CD is like prompting you to like get into this altered state, like I don't know if it's theta or alpha or something, delta maybe, where your brain is like, the state that monks can readily get into to meet my spirit guides. So I was following the promptings and met the deer. But deer always like show up for me in weird places. And I'm like, okay, I guess, there he is again. So I was left behind the coins. The death of my friend in Florida really, kind of destroyed me. Even though she allowed me to do the Camino with the inheritance, losing her eviscerated me. So I left behind a coin in her memory and some other memories that I had. So I was walking in the woodland again, all by myself. Again, no one's around because it's so early. And I come to this place on the path where I just had this distinct feeling, sit down next to the stream and I was like, I want to get breakfast. And it was just the sense, sit down next to the stream. And so whenever I get this feeling, usually an animal shows up for me. This has just happened my whole life. I can't explain it. I don't know. So I sit down on this log, and within 30 seconds across the stream in the woodland, this baby deer steps out of the woods. And what's weird about it is that 1 second the deer wasn't there, and then the next second the baby deer was. And what was doubly weird was there were no other deer around, no mother, no one else. And the deer just stood there and looked at me. And we like contemplated each other for like 30 seconds. And then it melted away into the woods. And I thought to myself, what is happening? I was freaking out because, of course, I'm a worrywart. I'm like, where's the mom? Where's the mom? Why is this baby all alone? I'm like so practical. So I thought, okay, so that happened. And then I got up and I started walking on the path again. And then I just stopped. I stopped and I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. That was my spirit guide or whatever that energy is, if you want to call it
Mm-hmm.
God or whatever, an angel, you know, coming to me and saying, good job. We ask you to do this. We ask you to walk the Camino. We ask you to show up. We gave you the invitation, which the way I got the invitation is a whole other thing. It's very a bizarre story. I could have said no, but the asking was so overt and ridiculous that I had a feeling that I was supposed to do it. Basically, the deer came and just said, good job. You did it. And we see
So
you.
awesome.
And now you can go on to the next adventure. So yeah,
The
that's my weird story.
only thing that would have made that any more cool or awesome is if the deer would have had like a clip-on tie or
Yes,
something.
I know.
But
It is
that's
really funny.
incredible. That's so
Yeah.
incredible. How do you mind saying how it happened that
Oh
you
yeah. Oh my
felt
God.
compelled to
Yes.
do the Camino?
Yeah. It's a weird story. So I was dating a gentleman who was Catholic, and I'm not Catholic, but he's a very liberal Catholic, and we would go to different churches on our trips. I love churches, the architecture, the liturgies, Episcopal churches, Presbyterian. We go to all sorts of different. I'm a nerd like that. I like to learn. And so we went to this feast day in south of Portland at this amazing Our Lady of Guadalupe monastery. And so basically the monks have a whole service, and my friend Linda had died just the year before. And so I'm in the service, and this woman sits next to me, and she is a carbon copy of Linda. I'm not even kidding. She looks exactly like Linda, down to the jewelry, the haircut, the color of her hair, everything. And I was like, that's weird. And we end up talking and afterwards, after the feast, and she's like, I'm a Presbyterian minister. And I was already having an inkling that I would be going in that direction. She's like, I'm a Presbyterian minister. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And we were talking. She said, I think I'm going to walk the Camino next year. And I thought, what is that? And so my partner at the time was like, oh, you don't know about it? So he bought me these maps and these booklets so I could see what it was. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's not me. I mean, I don't backpack. I don't I speak a little Spanish, but I'm also not Catholic because it's known as a Catholic pilgrimage route. Nice. I like to learn. Thank you for the supplemental materials, but okay. Okay.
Right.
So then a few months later, my friend calls me and said, oh my God, I just watched the best movie. It's so good. I'm buying you the movie and I'm mailing it to you. So it comes a few days later and I open it and it's The Way. She didn't
Mm-hmm.
tell me what it was about. It's this movie called The Way, made
Yep.
by Emilio Estevez and Martin Sheen. And it's a story, it's a little bit maudlin about these people who walk the Camino and how it changes them. Don't get me wrong, I cry like a baby every time I watch it. And I thought, oh, interesting. She didn't know anything about the Camino. She didn't know I was even had this conversation with this woman. And I was like, oh, now I see, like, I guess literally see what it's like. I mean, here it is. These people are walking, whatever. Okay. And then about 4 months later, I'm on my acupuncturist table and I'm talking, and he knows the woman who sent me the movie. And I said, oh, yeah, she sent me this movie about the way. And he said, oh my God, my mom had to stop walking after 300 miles because she broke her foot. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, she broke her foot, so she had to quit walking. And I said to him, how does everyone know about this except me? Like, I'm literally the only person on the planet that doesn't know about the Camino. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then he starts telling me all this stuff about it. And I'm like, that's interesting. Why does this keep coming up from these random people? And then about, again, like another 4 or 5 months, this is the strangest one, okay? My friend from the Oregon coast flew to Kansas because her mother had passed away, and she was cleaning out her mother's study. And her mother had been a pack rat. And so it was like going through every single piece of paper because you don't know what's important. And so she calls me and she said, okay, I'm going to mail you something from my mom's study. And I said, okay. And she said, I don't know why, but I feel compelled to send this to you. And it is very strange, but I feel like you're supposed to have it. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but this is for you. This is yours. And I was like, okay. And so it comes 3 days later. I open the envelope and it is a travel guide for the Camino from the 1960s.
Oh my gosh.
And I sit there and I think to myself, what's happening? I don't know what is happening right now. What is happening? And so whenever I'm confused about something, I always pull a tarot card because I'm like, you know what? It doesn't give bad advice, whatever. So I pulled one tarot card and the message was, you have not been listening to the messages we've been sending.
Oh
And
my
I was like,
gosh.
are you joking? Like, you
It
want me to
just
walk? I
smacked you
know.
across the face.
I know. I sat on the bed and looked up at the sky and I was like, there was a lot of swearing. And I was like, are you effing kidding me? You want me to walk the Camino? You want me to walk the Camino? Is that what I'm being told? And I was like, this is stupid because I'm not Catholic. I don't do this. I have a job. If I do it, I'm going to do it for months. I'm not going to just do some lackadaisical party thing. First of all, and I know nothing. I know nothing. Nothing. But you want me to walk the Camino. This is so stupid. And then as the weeks progressed, I was like, and then I'm going to need someone to watch my house and take care of my cats and do all this. And my partner was he's like, well, typically I'd be the one to walk the Camino because I'm Catholic. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. But one day I finally just was like, all right, this is an invitation. I mean, it's so overt and ridiculous, but I was still resentful because that's just the way I am. And I'm like, fine, I'll do it. I'll do it. And the second
But
I
not because I
decided,
want to.
right, right, every door, every obstacle was blown out of the way. Every single one. Someone called me and said, hey, my friend needs 3 months, maybe 4 months to stay in a place because they're having knee surgery. And I was like, oh my God, I need someone to watch my animals in my house while I'm gone. So I had someone take care of that. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to stay. I'm going to take I was so gobsmacked by this whole thing that I was like, I'm not going to fly. I'm going to take a ship from Miami to Barcelona. It was the global repositioning tour of the Norwegian Epic at that time, which had like 5,000. It was the largest cruiser in the world at that time, had 5,000
Yeah.
people on it.
And when it's repositioning, it's cheaper, right?
Yes, yes. It's just going to the Mediterranean for the
Yeah.
summer. So I was like, I'm going to need, I'm going to start in southern France. I put a message up on Facebook. Does anyone know anyone in Barcelona? A friend in the States was like, yes, here's my friends in Barcelona. You can stay with them for free for a week. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to drive across the US because, again, I can't even process what I'm doing. So I drove from Portland through Santa Fe, through New Orleans, and had adventures in both Santa Fe and New Orleans that were totally insane. And then got to Miami where a friend was like, just park your car over here. And yeah, we'll take care of it and look after it while you're gone. Every obstacle, everything that was saying, I was like worried it was like solved within a few weeks. And so I really had no excuse not to go.
That is so incredible.
I know. And you know what? At the time, the Epic was the only one that had studios for single travelers. So, it didn't have a view or anything, but I was like, I don't care. This is like necessity. I'm on the ship.
Right.
I don't need a view. I'm just getting from one place to the next. So yeah,
Right.
it was
You're
a
in your room
huge
to
adventure.
sleep anyway, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
So in the interest of time, a couple more stories. Can you tell, you said you had some epic adventure, or maybe not epic, but some crazy adventures on your route to Florida.
Oh yeah.
Maybe a couple of those. And then if you have anything else you want to share before we get to the final 5 questions, that'd be awesome.
Sure. Yeah. So I was in Santa Fe and, I'm going to walk the Camino. So I'm like, I'm going to stop at Chimayo, which is and I spent like 3 or 4 days in Santa Fe. Chimayo is an ancient, again, pilgrimage site that's really and the priest there was 90 years old from Barcelona.
Oh, geez.
So I know.
Not surprised, I guess.
So I go and I'm walking around the church and around the grounds and they have it's a village. And so there's lots of artists and art and I'm looking at all this art and I end up spending 4 or 5 hours there because I make friends with this gentleman and I buy a piece of art and he leaves and then his other friend comes over and talks to me and we just have a great conversation and I can tell that he's Sometimes people who walk close to the edge of like sanity are a little squirrely. So I was like, this guy's a little squirrely. Like he has one foot in this world and one foot in another world that I don't understand. And so after talking with him for a few hours, because I am nothing if not polite, he turns to me and says, you know, that hamster wheel in your brain where you keep going back to the same worries and same concerns over and over, like that's not good and that has to go. Like that just has to go. And I was like, what? And he said, and by the way, the next time I'm going to see you is going to be in 1,000 years, but we'll recognize each other because we had this conversation. And then he walked away. And I was like, what just
After 3 hours of conversation, that's how
I'm
it ends.
telling you. So I was like, okay, I feel like I got my benediction for this trip from this guy because he was just so mystical. Then I get to New Orleans and a dear friend was living there. So I stayed at her place and I don't know the work she was doing, but she was like, look, this weekend I'm entertaining British Special Forces because they're in town for something. And
What?
so we're going to go to the French Quarter. So all of us are going to go together. Is that okay with you? And I was like, sure. I don't even actually know what that means, but okay. And then, I get all bundled up because it's still like a little chilly. It's like April or early May. And, we meet these guys. They're all like people you see in movies, okay? All like 6 feet tall. I have never seen muscles in my life like that. It was actually kind of scary. But also very self-contained and very self-controlled. And so you'd look at them and you wouldn't think, oh my gosh, that person's a weapon, but you'd look at them and say, you know, I don't want to mess with that person because they were funny, they were hilarious, they were smart, they were in town for work. Who knows what that work was? But they wanted to have a good time. So we're all like having fun and drinking and what have you. And then I get out my jacket and I put it on, and one of the guys goes, "Oh my God, is that an Arc'teryx jacket?" And I said, "Yes." And he lifts me off the ground and goes, "They're our global, supplier. Arc'teryx is the company Special Forces uses in Britain." And then I literally got passed from guy to guy. They're like, "Look at this. She's wearing our company. Oh my God." It was so fun. And then I was like everyone's favorite. Okay.
Oh
So
gosh.
you don't know what it's like to them party in the French Quarter with British Special Forces who has your back
Yeah,
and
that could
everybody's
end
having
you
fun.
in a second.
Yes. Yes. And it was just I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I got the mystical experience at Chimayo in Santa Fe with this guy saying, I'll see you in 1,000 years. And then I go to New Orleans and have the British Special Forces make me their mascot, and I'm the belle of the ball for the rest of the night. And basically, like it was just a crazy night of hilarity and insanity. And I was like, oh, that was Linda, my friend who had passed away. And the reason I could do the Camino because she always liked a cute guy, and she always
Mm,
liked, she didn't like, she wasn't like lascivious or anything. She just was like appreciated the form. And so I felt like I got a double benediction, one from Linda, like a super sexy benediction, and then the mystical religious one in Santa Fe. And so I like dusted my shoulders off and I was like, think I'm covered for this trip.
I guess I'm still curious to know what your friend did for work. That she was entertaining a group of British Special Forces.
I like, you know what? It was interesting. All she
She
told
probably
me
couldn't
was,
share.
yeah, she could not. And she was like, they're in town because they've been at the base testing some hardware or something that some defense contractor was making or something. But I was like, you know what? I sort of ask you what you do and you tell me all these other things, but I'm like, this doesn't compute now.
Yeah, none of it jives.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're not selling stuff on eBay. You're
Right.
lying.
Right.
Oh, this has been really fantastic. Is there anything else that you can think of before we jump into questions that we've missed, or any other places in the world that you've been that you want to make sure you talk about before we do that?
Oh gosh,
Even in the
um,
U.S. too. I mean, that's kind
yeah,
of where we are now. But
yeah.
yeah.
Um, I moved to Florida for a couple months to take care of my friend Linda when she was going through Parkinson's deep brain stimulation surgery in Gainesville. But we
Hmm.
lived down in Palm Beach. And that was just completely different because I drove from Portland to Palm Beach to take care of her because afterwards I was going to drive to Chicago and be with my family. And just the juxtaposition of, oh, everybody there wears flip flops. everybody's in tank tops. It's a beach society. You go to the bar, the floor is sand. But I do have to say that those 2 months with her were the most challenging of my entire life. She basically couldn't eat solid food anymore. She was a skeleton. She couldn't walk. She needed a wheelchair. She was at the end stages of Parkinson's. So this surgery was the only thing that was going to save her. And I moved in with her for 2 months because 1 month she had the surgery where they put the leads in her brain. And the second month, we went back and had them tuned. They worked pretty well for about a week or two, but her Parkinson's was such a rare form and so aggressive that she died within a year. Just did not work for her. But I have to say that that period of time and being in such a beautiful place, but being around someone who's that profoundly ill and not able, she couldn't even talk at times, really changed my entire life. And it was one of the most difficult times of my life and one of the most beautiful times of my life, one of the most exquisitely, painfully beautiful times of my life. But we would go to what I now know. I didn't know back then, but her mother was a member of Mar-a-Lago. So we would go there to swim in the pool or get lunch. It was really good to get Linda out of the house and, get her out to eat food or do whatever. And so I remember one time we went to lunch. This is really funny. And I didn't know what this place was. And I'm there with her nurse, who was so funny and so risque and ribald and like this woman. So funny. We got along so well. Linda's in her wheelchair next to us, and we're just having the most scandalous conversation. I mean, just about things you should not talk about. We're laughing hysterically. We're being so naughty and ridiculous and kind of loud, like just having a great time. And we left, and Linda was like, okay, you guys, you can't do that anymore. Do you know who was sitting at the table behind us? And we said no. And she's like, Jack Welch, the CEO of GE.
Oh
Okay.
my
You cannot
gosh.
talk about what you're talking about at this place. Like, people don't allow it. And so we just started laughing some more or whatever. But now I know I've eaten at Mar-a-Lago 3 times and the burger is delicious, just to let everyone know.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I guess, maybe you learned your lesson, or did you?
Yes. I think, yes. At least there.
Yeah. Right. Time and place. Time and place. Do you have like a fear of flying?
Yes. Well, there's a lot to it. So, first of all, I hate heights. I
Mm-hmm.
hate the lack of control. I really hate enclosed spaces. So it doesn't matter if it's an elevator or a train or whatever. I can't stand being locked in a space with complete strangers. And with a plane, you're like so close and it's almost like you're sitting in people's laps. So I don't like being really close to people either in confined spaces. That's like another horror for me. So it like combines a whole bunch of things
Mm,
that I hate. And plus, I don't miss flying. I mean, I have flown more than a lot of people I know because of just living overseas. I've been on more planes in my entire life than a lot of people I know, but the experience is so horrific now and no fun. And it's like a cattle call and it's cramming everyone in and people are mad and getting drunk and like insulting people. And I'm just like, I don't need that stress. And I'd rather do things more slow anyway. And this country is so beautiful and there's so much strange stuff out there, like T-Rexes everywhere you look, statues, like large balls of twine, strange dinosaur museums. I mean, there's like
hmm.
so much to see that I love to drive across the US. It's just the best.
No, that's a great point actually, because, and I mentioned before, like we tend to on this podcast, especially even we talk about so many places that people have traveled overseas because we think that's where the stories are. That's what we want to talk about. But there is so much beauty in the United States that we just don't think about. And when you fly, even if, especially like a lot of times, depending on where you live, to get to another country, you typically have to take one flight to one place, and that's not usually direct. And then you connect to another flight, and you're just flying over all this beauty that you're just missing out on. So, yeah, that's a great point. I think that people should pay more attention if you have the ability and the time to do so.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. And just one last question before we get to the final five, because I'm just curious. It seems like it's very easy for you to have conversations with strangers, which is, I think it's a great quality. I feel like I'm the same way in many ways, and I really enjoy it, especially when I'm traveling to talk to other people, whether it's other travelers or locals, especially locals if I can communicate. But when you do that, when you do have conversations with people, have you had people that you've met along the way that you still talk to today or still have some connection with today that you've met in other countries or just during traveling?
Yeah, when I was living in Pakistan, so interesting. My best friend there was Vanessa Silva, and she was a Canadian. And several years ago, she found me on Facebook. And so we're in contact and we talk about Pakistan every once in a while. So it's interesting what the internet has done for communication and connection. It's really opened a lot of that up. There was a gentleman I met while walking the Camino who's from Australia who was he was battling a really severe disease. And after a few years, he and I got back in touch and we're communicating and sending messages back and forth. So, yeah, it depends. I mean, I have to say that more these days, I'm staying in contact with certain people that I interview on the podcast. And that's because we both just live in different places. We really like each other and we get along and we just want to stay in each other's lives and make sure that we're okay, that life is good, share our stories and what have you. Yeah, I love meeting people. I love finding out their stories. I love talking to them. This world is such a beautiful place and there are a lot of good people in it. And I'm like, I want to meet them all. I want to meet them all. So yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Speaking of that, because you mentioned the podcast earlier, and I keep kicking the can down the road. I'm going to get to the final five questions, but tell a little bit more about like really what is the podcast about?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my main podcast is Bite Sized Blessings, and I started during the pandemic. I graduated with my Master's of Divinity right as the pandemic began. And as you can imagine, no jobs anywhere I looked. So I was sitting at home where I spent a lot of time during the next couple of years and thought everybody was afraid, lonely, scared. They're like, what is happening in the world? And I've always been someone that people come and they're like, I had this weird thing happen to me. And they want to talk about it and unpack it. And I was like, I love those stories. I bet other people would like to hear those stories. And so I started the podcast. And the main question is, have you ever witnessed something you think was magical, miraculous, or mysterious? And how did it change your life? And I have had everyone from atheists to Baha'i to people who are like, oh, I'm sort of religious, but sort of not, to Christians, to Catholics, to people of the Jewish persuasion. I can't say that word. Anyway, I mean, you name it, I have interviewed them. And also people from all over the world. I've met people from all over the world that I've interviewed, from Turkey, from Canada, from South America. So it's really scratches the itch of meeting someone new that I love and getting to know them. It scratches the itch of, I love these stories. This is a very personal podcast for me. I love these stories and I love meeting these people and knowing that there are gorgeous people out in the world doing big, beautiful work, because there are a lot of them out there and we miss that in our day-to-day news cycle that yes, there are a lot of individuals out there doing beautiful and good things. So I need that reminder. I need to remember because as I'm sure you've noticed, the news is not great lately,
Yeah.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we definitely need as much positivity and inspiration and hope that we can get.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's awesome. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I love this part of the show. I hope that you enjoy it. So we'll jump right into question one. And if
Okay.
anything stirs a memory or a story that you want to tell, I have time. So question number one is, and I phrase this very carefully, I say it every time, but of all of the places in the world that you have been, what is your number one, or maybe one and two, most memorable meal experience that you've ever had?
Oh my gosh. So I'm going to tell you something.
Hmm.
In France, I stopped at this little town that I can't remember the name of, and I stayed at this house auberge. These people opened their own personal house up to pilgrims that could stay there. And then they told me during dinner that they had owned like a 4 or 5 star restaurant or something in the past, and they retired. And so they host pilgrims now to make money. The entire house was covered in art that she created, that he created. It was just an incredibly beautiful experience. So I stayed there one night and drank the food and ate the food. And every French meal is an experience. So, for example, at one house, they gave me this white wine that they'd mixed with a local white wine that they'd mixed with crushed strawberries from the field next door. There was always 4 or 5 courses. Not a lot of food, but like impeccable food. So I'm at this house, have this incredibly delicious meal. I'm like, that was good. You know, dust my things, start, I'm like, I don't want to walk over the mountains. My knees are killing me. They're like, take a taxi to the next town. You can take the bus over the mountains and then keep walking. And I'm like, okay. So I sit there. 5 hours later, I look at the bus schedule, which is in French. And I'm like, it says, I think, the bus runs every day except Wednesday. And I'm like, does that say Wednesday? I'm not sure what Wednesday looks like in French. And then I thought, what's today? And it was like, it's Wednesday. So I had to call them and go back to their house where I met new pilgrims when I went back. They're like, just come back and eat again and whatever. So they fix this glorious, glorious salad that is so beautiful. And it has these beautiful toast points on it with this spread on it. Now you have to know that I am very, very anti foie gras because it is literally you're torturing the goose and force feeding it and giving it this liver disease. And then people eat the diseased liver, which I think is so disgusting. It's just so disgusting. So I'm eating this meal and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm in heaven. I'm in heaven again. I'm like, heaven, heaven, heaven. And I eat these toast points and I'm like, oh my God, what is this? This is the best thing I've ever had in my life. Oh my God. Oh my God. And I'm like, what is this spread? And they're like, that's foie gras. And I was like, oh my God, no.
Oh, no.
No. It's so delicious. So that was the only time I ate it. It was accidental. Now I know, so I never have to eat it again. But yeah, that was my most memorable meal.
That is crazy. That is crazy. Awesome. Okay. Question number 2 is, of all of the places in the world that you have been, obviously including the United States, where is the one place in the world that if I said, Kirsten, here's a free trip, you would say, no, thank you. I am not going there again.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
But it
I would
doesn't have to
say,
be taken that way. It could be that I've been there and I don't think I need to go back. So it doesn't have to
ugh,
be horrible
I would say Florida.
as a state.
Yes, the entire
The
state.
whole.
And the
Okay.
only reason I say that is because I was there when it was so hot and so humid, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And then the culture down there was really disconcerting for me because I came from Portland, like this town of like hippies and, everyone's super chill and doing their own thing to a place that was hyper plastic surgery. Everyone had had plastic surgery, and that's not bad. It's not a bad thing, but it was like the cultural disconnect was so profound. And I met a guy at a bar and he'd already had 10. And he's like, I have a list of 9 more surgeries I want, which included everything from butt implants, calf implants. He was having his nose redone. I mean, I was like, I have never seen anything like this. It was a little intense for me. And everyone was trying to outdo each other in like, you know, the least amount of clothes and like, let's I mean, I heard some stories. I was like, this place is too crazy for me. And I could never keep up with the youngins here. I just know that right now.
You
And
said
then
youngins.
youngins, yeah.
I
And
love
then
it.
the
I love it.
food was all kind of the same everywhere. It didn't matter where you went. Now, the margaritas were delicious. They were
That's
really,
what makes
really delicious.
everything there tolerable.
Yes, and the beaches were really beautiful, but it just wasn't my jam. And the traffic when you'd have to drive up to Gainesville, it was a 4-hour drive. I have never witnessed scarier driving in my entire life. It was like nobody cared if they lived or died. Every time we went, there was a stop because there was a catastrophic wreck where people died or people had to get to the hospital. Once we stopped and the life flight helicopter landed in the middle of the highway to like try and save someone's life. I was like, this place is too intense for me. There's like way too much going on, way too intense. I don't care if I come back here, but I'm sorry, everybody who listens in Florida. I'm sure there's a lot that's amazing, and I just didn't see it.
I think a majority of the people who live in Florida feel the same way, even though they live there. I'm just kidding. I'm being sarcastic. Maybe. Okay. Question number 3 flips that on its head. Of all of the places in the world that you have been, where's the 1 or 2 that you absolutely, before you die, have to get back to?
Well, I would say Kashmir for sure. I would love to go and just live in Kashmir, frankly. I mean, it's a simple, like in a simple little life, quiet. I don't need the internet, except I don't know how I would do my podcast. But the beauty there is just, if you want to talk about nourishing and nurturing your soul, there. is beauty beyond imagining. And I think that would be really good for me. The second place, I mean, it's, you can't just go in and out of Kashmir because the conflict flares up and then it goes away or banks down a little bit and then it flares up again. So that's, kind of one of those places I'm like, wish, wish, wish. The other place is, I hate to say this, is France because I had such a great experience there and the food was so ridiculous. I mean, my God, the pastries are insane. Okay. Can't even tell you. I went to this when I was in Toulouse. I spent a week in Toulouse as my base. And then I went to Carcassonne for a few days, which is this ancient medieval site that is just astonishing, except the inside of it they've changed and there's like a KFC and a Taco Bell in there. And that made me really depressed. But the rest of Carcassonne is a medieval city, a medieval like walled city is astonishing. And then I went to Albi, which has this church that is just God, Albi is so beautiful. But I was in Toulouse, and my favorite part, this is terrible, but it tells you a lot about me, is I found in this quarter this most amazing pastry shop, which had all these cakes and everything, and these tiers of cake stands and cake plates. And you could go in and have lunch, or you could just have pastries and like a drink or whatever. So I found it, and I was always like I think I went 3 times. And so the day before I left to begin walking again, they had this apple cake, okay, that I was like, this is insane. I come in and there's only like 2 slices left. And I'm like, I would like the apple cake. And she's like, okay, a slice. And I'm like, no, both to go. And don't cut them in. Don't cut them into pieces. Just put it in a box. And then she watched me as I like shoved the box into my pack and like
Oh,
smashed
God.
it down. I'm sure she's like, you, madame, are an abomination. And so, but you know
They
what? The
have your
next day
picture
when I
on the
was,
wall now,
yeah,
and now
right.
even if you go
Don't let her
back,
come
they're
back.
gonna.
Don't let her come back. The next day when I was walking in the middle of this field, in the middle of nowhere, all alone, I sat on a stump and I pulled out that smash cake and I ate. I was just like, oh my God, I'm in heaven. I am in heaven and there's beauty in front of me, behind me, all around me, but in my mouth too. And I am happy.
I love it so much. Okay, so Kashmir in France. Noted. Okay, where am I at now? I am at question 4. So, of all of the places in the world that you have not been, and I always say this, not bucket list, because I know like my bucket list is quite extensive, but the 1 or 2 places on this earth that you absolutely must get to that you've never been.
Well, I would say, I love art. I mean, I am just a sucker for art. And one of the places I want to go in Europe is Vienna because love Klimt, the Klimt brothers, Gustav Klimt, his beautiful art. But I also know that Vienna is a treasure trove of just art and beauty and architecture and food and all of it. The other place is Venice because it's sinking beneath the ocean. Now, I know Venice has become overrun with tourists and they're like banning people because they don't want them to come because tourists can be jerks and really impolite and mean and demanding and entitled and gross. So I get it, but I want to go to Venice and walk around and enjoy the city and look at the art and spend like a month or 2 there and just soak it in. All of my trips are like a month or 2. Like I'm going to spend a month, 2, 3 months, however long they'll have me, but you're asking for 2. There's so many other places as well, but I would say Vienna and Venice are the 2 places that I would, yes,
I'm
100%.
gonna I'm gonna make you a little jealous. I've been to both.
Okay.
Vienna, I was only there for the Christmas markets, but at that time of year, oh my gosh, it was gorgeous and the food was wonderful. And we were just in Venice last year, and that's one of the only couple places on earth that I will go back to because there's only so much time, and
Right.
so I find it very difficult to go back to a place again when there's so much to explore. But Venice is on the list.
Oh, amazing. I am
Final
jealous.
question. Final question is what? Where are you going? Do you have anything that's planned?
Oh my God, you have to know I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which now everybody's moving to because it's become popular. It is
Of course.
utterly, yes, I know. It is utterly gorgeous. It's the high desert. The light here is astonishing. It's a really special place. It's really beautiful. Now, I work here and I live here, so I'm busy. So I don't get out and see everything that I should. There's a lot of wildness, a lot of camping, a lot of beauty. There's so much art. There's just a lot to do in New Mexico. Like I've been to Carlsbad Caverns. A lot of people don't know that New Mexico has a town called Pie Town. And they literally have a pie festival every year where you can go and eat 10 pieces of pie if you want, with reenactments and cultural reenactments. And it's like a little slice of Americana. They have Billy the Kid days where they have Billy the Kid reenact. I mean, this state has so much that I need to see. Yeah, I
Have you
need
been
to
to
plan
the
some
hot
more.
air balloon festival that they do? That's in
I
Albuquerque, I
have
think,
not
right?
been to that yet, but also because you have to like get there at 4 a.m. or three
Oh
in the
gosh.
morning or something. And I'm like, not yet. I'm not ready for that.
I can do the
So yeah,
Camino, but I'm not
yes,
getting
I
up at
can do
4
the
in the
Camino,
morning.
but I cannot get up at 3. Also, there's like, I don't know, like 100,000 people. Like you're fighting all these people to like, and
Yeah.
it's just like not my cup of tea. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm claustrophobic per se, but I definitely don't deal well with tight crowds. So,
yeah,
yeah, I feel you on that one.
I don't like it. And sometimes people don't smell very nice.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, so I try to avoid that too.
Kirsten, this has been awesome. I can't believe it's been over an hour and a half that we've been talking. Is there anything you'd like to say or wrap with before we hit stop?
Well, I mean, I think the only thing that is appropriate for anybody traveling to another country or even in the US is just go as yourself. And hopefully that self is kind, is open hearted, is open to the adventure, is open to meeting strangers and being kind to them, is willing to learn and have a little humility. I know these are all very tall orders for every single person who's listening, but
Yeah, I
I
would
think
agree
showing up.
100%. I think
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think I lost you for a second, but you're back. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Where did I drop off?
Humility.
Okay. Humility. See, that's a powerful word. Anyway, so just show up in these countries and the US, wherever you travel, with a little humility and be open to having conversations with people outside of your experience because there are a lot of incredible human beings out there and we need more connection right now. So yeah.
Absolutely could have not have said it better myself. So really wonderful, Kirsten. Good luck with everything that you have going on. You do have a lot of endeavors that you're working on, and I think it's awesome that your creative self is, you have these outlets, and so I will be trying to follow along with what you have going on. I'm going to make sure I earmark and listen to some of your podcasts and throw on some YouTube. I get into wormholes on YouTube for hours, and so I'll add you to my list. And yeah, so again, thank you for taking this time with me, and stay on with me for a minute if you would.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. This was so fun.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Have a great night.
You too.
And there's another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast in the books. Thank you so much for listening today. It was another great guest with some great stories, as always, and I hope that you will support all of the guests by checking out the show notes and going to their web pages, seeing any socials and projects that they may have going on. And please, again, I'll ask as always to like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really does help to allow the podcast to grow and reach more people, and I appreciate you for doing that. Also, if you haven't done so, check out the website, whybpodcast.com, where you can find blog posts. If you'd like to be a guest, please register to be a guest on the site. And check out the merch page. There's some really cool stuff if you're interested in representing the pod, along with some other cool travel items and apparel that I'm working on every day as well. Join me again next week for another great guest with more incredible stories. New episodes drop every Sunday just after midnight Eastern Time. Until then, thank you for being here, and have a great day.